This evening we will have our presenter is Jay Harrison. He's going to talk about Android development and some other topics about the life cycle of Android and how it come about, and possibly if you were looking for that as a career option, he'll be able to talk to that also. But before we get started, I want to take an opportunity to tell you a little bit about BDPA and the chapter, who we are, why we are, and what we are. I see a lot of new faces I haven't seen before. BDPA is a national organization. This is the Detroit chapter. The organization was formed by David Wimbley and Earl Pace in 1974. So they were at a technical conference, and they looked around, and they were the only ones there of color. So as a result of that, they formed BDPA. And we have been a national organization probably about 3 years after that initial conference. The Detroit chapter is celebrating its 30th year this year. 30 years the Detroit chapter has been delivering technology and working with the community here in the Detroit area and developing people who are interested in IT. Over the 30 years, we've probably worked with over 3,000 youth in our computer competition teams. We send a team to the national conference pretty much every year. Our team is very well known to be, because we win a lot. We haven't won in a few years, but we have a reputation. And along those lines, I would say that the Detroit chapter has a strong reputation in the national organization. The national conference is coming up in August this year, July 30th through August the 4th. If you know someone or you are yourself looking for career opportunities, this is the place to be. At the conference, Friday, Saturday, 2 days, full days, we have a career fair. The career fair is free. And at that career fair, there's anywhere from 30 to 40 top IT companies looking for people just like you and me. I don't know of any other career fair where they're looking for technology people in the United States that happens. This is happening, and it's free for you to get in. The sales associates, I saw they have a conference coming up. It's going to be in D.C., and they want $100 to get into their career fair. So it's worth your time to go down to Baltimore. If you're interested, drive down for the weekend or whatever. Get some face time if you're looking for opportunities. Please consider that. Also, consider attending our conference. Once you attend the conference, you'll be attending every year. So hopefully you will consider that. I want to take a quick moment, if we can just kind of go around the room and everyone introduce yourself and tell us how you came to find out about the meeting tonight.
My name is Jeff Whitewell. I'm a student studying with an Indian IT company called Emphasis, and we're learning software development and business analysis skills. And my classmate told me about this particular class.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Jovan. I'm also an intern at Emphasis.
My name is Terrence Willis. I'm on IC Data Communication. We basically take time, and we had a room scheduled earlier for another project. So since you guys had something more interesting on the agenda, review.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Hi, my name is Erica Block. I work at CompuWare. I've been involved with BDPA since maybe 99, 2000. I haven't been around for a little bit, but I'm trying to get back involved. I heard about the meeting via email.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alex Vaught. I'm here with my wife, Erica Vaught, and I also work at CompuWare. I'm a software licensing specialist right now, and I'm looking to venture out to some other things. So that's my story.
Hi everybody, my name is Janelle Hale. I'm the secretary of the UPA, and right now I work for a software company that makes electronic medical records, and I'm a software trainer.
Hi, my name is Dwayne Jones. I work for Blue Cross Blue Shield. I don't know about the music. Okay.
Hello, my name is Keith Young. I'm the owner, founder of Ecotech Lab here in Techtown. It's a research laboratory for young inventors, and heard about the meeting from Clifford Samuels and yourself last week.
Hi, I'm Lorraine Stewart David. I just made a lot of cars. I just stopped. I am I've been around a long time, since 90, back in the 90s, no one tell my age. But I'm National VP of Finance for the national organization. Also, interim finance Detroit chapter.
Hi everyone, I'm Matt Guillory. I'm a project manager at GE. Been involved in BDPA for about 4 years now, and I'm the president-elect for the Detroit chapter.
All right. Yeah, I'm at the improvise and just kind of put the camera on my profile pic online. So, yeah, William Bowen, for full-time federal government, do what they consider to be IT work. Also teach part-time at U of D Mercy, teaching network security courses. And this past semester, I actually started doing boot camp courses there in physical education, as well as a few at Take-Home now. So right now, I'm doing weekly group exercise classes every week. So I'm in IT and PT as well at the same time. All right.
Hi, Kevin Johnson. I'm the Vice President of Information Technology for a company called Homedics out in Commerce Township. I found out about the meeting because of the email blast that I got on. Basically, I did a presentation here a couple of years ago on career success strategies. So I've been keeping up from afar, and I thought it was about time to show my face again and give a little support.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michelle Morgan, and I am a project manager at Ford Motor Company. Also, an officer of BDPA, incoming VP of Finance, sitting under Lorraine. And I'm very interested in the topic this evening. I work in enterprise technology before, and we're very interested in bringing on a large corporation and what they can do with the mobile app.
And finally, Clifford Samuels Jr. I'm the VP of Technology Automation. I've been involved in BDPA since the turn of the millennium. And I currently work in the state of Michigan in the sexually transmitted disease area on the network and IT support. And also remind you, we have a computer back here. If you, when you get a chance for you to leave, sign in. So we have an email address and everything. And also he's asked for a beta group for a software test. So this is where you sign up for that beta group also.
Thank you all for coming. Without further ado, I want to introduce Jay Harrison, our key speaker. Is there actually any way for both of these to show up at this one? Jay Harrison, I'm president of Harrison Technology. To give you a little bit about my background, I'm from Detroit, native. Went to Renaissance High School, graduated with the first graduating class of '82, and got involved with computer technology pretty early on. Went to U of M for about a year, dropped out, started a robotics company called Deneb Robotics. Ran that for about 12 years, was senior vice president of research and development. And then we sold that to a company called Dassault Systems. They make CATIA, a lot of CAD systems, for over $100 million. Then took a little time off. I had started another company while that one was going on called Internet Operations Center, and ran that one for about 7 years. They were recently purchased about 5 years ago by NetLink Software Group, which is still here in Southfield, Indiana. Did a little work with the Department of Justice to try to keep track of Detroit Police Department's behavior. And I was the architect of the MAS system, the Management Awareness System that Detroit Police use today. And now my new thing is starting into mobile application development and mobile application across media platforms. So, with that, the purpose of this talk is to discuss where mobile fits in terms of technology revolutions. And given that I've been around a little bit, I've been through a few technology revolutions. To discuss the state of the mobile market, discuss mobile devices and operating systems and what's out there,
application development approaches. What are the things that are being used? How are applications being developed today? And then to break down a simple Android app, because I'm focusing in this case on Android. I'm largely technology agnostic. They all have their uses. You'll see why for this time I'm looking at Android. So, the technology revolutions in my lifetime. I grew up with the personal computers in the 80s. My first computer I programmed was a TRS-80, a Radio Shack, TRS-80 Model 1 with 4K of memory. And it was great. And what you could do in the 80s with things like the Radio Shack Model 4s and Model 2s and the IBM PCs is productivity software, spreadsheets, word processing, gaming came to be in that. But it was lonely. It was just you and your programs. You weren't talking to anybody. You were in a little dark room doing your thing. Then the 90s came along, and when it brought the internet. The internet brought websites. You had bloggers now, people who really didn't care about what they said in the past, but now millions of people are listening to them or reading them. You got MySpace, if anyone remembers that, and Facebook. And what was the difference here is the revolution is it was privately social. It brought the technology further up the chain, so more people were using it. And they were actually, this time, interacting with other people much more. But still, you were sitting at home in front of your computer, typing with some phantom friends who were or were not, that person you thought they were. Then now we've got the mobile revolution, where really mobile is simply a combination of PCs and internet. Those smartphones that you have in your pocket really are like significant computers. The Android types and even some of the Blackberries run Linux, run an operating system which back in the day was called Unix. It's actually running on your phone. The thing that was really different about that is now you had true lifestyle integration. You had a computer that it wasn't a certain part of the room that you went to use it or certain things you had to do it. You had this thing with you. You have this thing with you all the time. It becomes part of your life. That is revolutionary because it allows physical social, meaning that you can interact with people around here and have a computer all at the same time and benefit from that augmented technology. And so the revolution was the removal of the technology barrier to normal social interaction. So you're not a geek anymore if you have a smartphone. Whereas if you had a big computer in the back room somewhere in your house, you probably were. So now let's take a look at the 2011 smartphone sales for worldwide market leaders. This is the latest data that I could get hold of. So if you take a look at the operating systems, you got Google with Android OS with 237 million units shipped worldwide last year. Apple with iOS was 91 million. Now, we hear a lot about Apple being the market leader. Well, that's because they make and sell their own software and hardware. So for a single software and hardware manufacturer, Apple is the leader. If you're looking at apps, however, and you're looking at penetration of the operating system throughout the world, you're looking at Android. Symbian actually has a significant presence still. Symbian is what was running on those Nokia phones. The ones that were considered kind of feature phones, halfway smartphones, could kind of get to the internet, but it was like WAP and things like that. They're still around, but you'll see what's happening to them in the next slide. Then we have Blackberry, with Blackberry OS with about 10% of last year's market. And I don't get a whole lot into Blackberry because I think they're trending down. From an architectural point of view, I have issues with them. They are centralized, meaning that all of your data has to go through a Blackberry server, which makes you very susceptible to failure. And just last year, there were a couple spectacular events where all Blackberry users in the world were down for a couple of days. That should happen. And then now we've got Microsoft Windows Phone OS. And I've got some asterisks by that. And that's because you think Microsoft has actually been in the market for over 10 years with mobile phones. So why do they only own 12.1%, or 3% rather, of the last year's sales? This is only counting Microsoft Windows Phone OS. Before that was Windows Mobile, Windows Pocket PC. They changed the name every 3-4 years. And so this is their latest incarnation, and it's only been out for a year, and they've been able to grab 3%. Now, those are nice static numbers to look at and think about, but here's what really matters. Let's look at this graph. So, you see the adoption over time. We've got 2007, through 2012, at least a piece of 2012. And so if we take a look at something like, let's say Symbian here, they were doing pretty well, beating everyone out. And then they hit a wall, and they're just heading straight down. So even though they've got a significant market share, that was sales from this part of the period. And as you got to the end of the year, their sales are dropping off to nothing. That was Nokia was one of the big makers of that Symbian, and or rather users of that. Nokia entered into an agreement, initially the proprietary agreement, to make only Windows phones. So that's what's kind of going on now. But then at the same time, we take a look at the iOS. And the iOS is looking pretty good. It was nowhere back in earlier because it wasn't around that much. And then just took off in 2011. But then at the same time, take a look at Android. You're off the chart. So if you're thinking about making an application and you want to make money on it, or you want lots of people to use it, this is where the people are right now. So let's take a look at operating systems versus devices. Because a lot of people some people get confused between what's an operating system, what's a manufacturer. Because that whole introduction of the Motorola Droid really confused a lot of people because people thought that Android was Motorola, because Motorola's got the Droid. No, Droid simply runs Android operating system. So we have Apple manufacturer, they make iOS. iOS is the iPhone, the iPad, and iPod. Apple's the only people who make anything that will run on that operating system. Microsoft Windows Phone. Currently it's on Nokia, and HTC has picked it up. Today I got news that they're in negotiation with Samsung and one other manufacturer, but not LG for some reason. Then we've got Google Android. Runs on HTC, Samsung, LG, Motorola, Amazon. Now here's a key. It's running on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Now these are not mobile phones. These are e-readers, but they're using this operating system as the basis for deploying that type of technology as well. And then finally we have Blackberry, running the Blackberry OS. Research in Motion is the only people who makes those phones, as far as I'm aware. So now let's talk about development programs. Let's say you want to actually do some development on these devices. What does it take to actually do it? Well, for Apple, there's a $100 registration fee to become an Apple developer. And that gets you access to their tools. You have to use the current version of OS X. And you're developing an Xcode 4, which is it's called an IDE, their integrated development environment, so you can do compile and run and test and debug all inside of one kind of program. The language that you're using is Objective-C, which is kind of like a Java-ized C. And Cocoa Touch, which is a framework for dealing with the gestures and interactions and the hardware devices, functions on the device. If you go the Microsoft route, it's free for simple development. You can get kind of like a Visual Studio Lite with Silverlight comes for free. However, if you actually want to make a real application, you really need Visual Studio, and that's at least $500. But as a student, it would be less, much less. You have to use Microsoft Windows, any variety pretty much you like. And you're developing Visual Studio with C# and Silverlight. C# is like a Java-ized C. So, you kind of get the motif going on here. Silverlight is a lot like a Flash API. It does a lot of the things that Flash does. It handles animations, also handles gesture input and things like that. Kind of like the Cocoa Touch. You'll see a similar paradigm throughout all of this mobile development. That's really what's important to know, is that it's not radically different, it's not scary and mysterious, it's pretty easy to do. Google Android, it's free, full on. You can use virtually any operating system you like, Windows, Linux, OS X, whatever, just about. You develop with Eclipse, which is an open source integrated development environment that lets you compile, test, debug, and do all of that. And you're developing in Java, and you're using the Android SDK, which is the tool set, the software development kit, the tool set that they give you. Yes?
Is anybody driving a white Lexus? Okay, you just got hit.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Sorry.
No worries. Sorry, actually. Okay, and then finally, we've got Blackberry. It is free to develop for. You have to use Microsoft Windows, and you develop in Blackberry Java development environment. It's called. I don't know about that JD got. Now, if you want to go to the website to figure out how to enroll or sign up for any of these, it's all pretty much the same. It is http://developer.whatever the company name is.com. So developer.apple.com, developer.microsoft.com, developer.android.com, or developer.blackberry.com. And you can go there, you can download the tools, and get going. So, now let's talk about any, well, you know, I don't want this to just be one way. If someone has like a pressing question, you can raise up and ask.
What about the other environment that Google had, open source?
That's not open source?
No, that they did open source. But they no longer support it.
Chrome?
No, oh shoot. Drawing a blank. Because it was kind of like a Visual Basic type of environment which
Oh, that was part of. I think that was part of the Google project.
Right.
And what they had was it was basically a WYSIWYG Android app creation tool.
Right.
And so you could just drag and drop simple stuff. I think it's still out there. If you go to projects.google.com, there are thousands of these different things. Again, when you go to developer.android.com, it will have some nice links to examples, to samples, and things like that. And that you're talking about actually kind of touches on this, because what these are multi-platform development alternatives. Let's say you don't want to code directly in C# for Apple, rather for Windows, and then jump over and do Java for Android, and then jump over and do Objective-C for Apple, because you really do want to be on all three platforms. I mean, really, as an app developer, you want your app as much out there as possible. So, what some companies have done is created multi-platform. You develop once for this framework, and it goes to all the different machines or device types. I will say, yes?
How efficient?
Yeah, I was going to say, there is no free lunch, okay? So what this means is, if you're developing and I'll get into the types of apps, but if you're developing a pretty simple app, maybe just some business logic, a little bit of communications, nothing fancy on the screen, no fancy like tilt device and GPS and things like that, although some of that is available, then these are great. I would very highly recommend them. If you've got some specialized code that you need to do something that may be a native library, for example, part of my app, I do augmented reality. And so I have this native library that I have to call to do these computations. You couldn't do that with these. But most of the stuff, you can get away with this. So this is I would look very hard at this. One of the other problems that these things bring, or one of the challenges, is that they obscure you, they hide you from the real details of the device you're running on. And so you won't really know how Android runs or and so later on that can cause you not to do things as efficiently as you might. But they're worthwhile. I would look very much at them. Adobe Air is a free runtime. Adobe Air is like Adobe Acrobat. It's free to display something, but you got to make that PDF file. You got to make that Air file. So you typically are doing an Air application in Flash, HTML5, or what is the other one they got? I don't think they have directory anymore. But basically, the Adobe, which used to be Macromedia, set of tools they were locked out of iPhone. Here, if you want to know the whole backstory, I got a little bit of time. The backstory is this. Steve Jobs had a big bug up his something with Adobe. He prevented Adobe from allowing Flash. Now, is everyone familiar with what Flash is? Okay, so Flash is that interactive thing you can write even little programs almost. Well, Apple would not let Adobe do Flash on its browser. And so they went to court about this, and so Adobe was trying to figure out some other way. Now, the reason why Apple didn't want Adobe Flash on their browser is because Apple owns the app market for Apple. When you make an app for Apple, you submit it to Apple. Apple will take up to 2 weeks to 2 years to approve your app. Meanwhile, you're twiddling your thumbs, hoping that it happens. So Adobe was in this thumb twiddling mode and was getting very upset. again, Apple didn't want it on there because if Flash were part of the browser, Adobe would be able to allow people to develop applications that would then run on Apple hardware. And Apple didn't want that to happen. They only wanted Apple stuff to run on Apple hardware. So then they went to court. Adobe won the lawsuit that says, okay, Apple doesn't have to put it inside their browser, but you have to support it somehow on your operating system. So Adobe created a runtime little container called Air. It runs as an app. And you make your apps, you compile it into this Air app, and then it runs on Apple hardware as if it were an iOS thing. So that's what Air was all about. Of course, and by the way, it gets on other platforms as well, like Android and I think even Blackberry. PhoneGap. PhoneGap runs just about on everything. It's free. They actually plan to move to an Apache license, which means that it will stay free. There is a movement, you're familiar with the whole open software movement. Yeah, it's matured. In the beginning it was all truly free. Now it's kind of changing in that there is a free version of the software which is generally crippled, and they let the community develop that, and they reap the benefits from that intelligence. And then they make a for-paid product that if you really want to get serious, that's what you have to get. Well, PhoneGap does not appear to be doing that kind of thing. It's going to be free. Mosing is another one. It's free for now. It is not in any open source type of license, so you can get it now for free, but if you build your application on it, they may start charging you down the road, and you will be locked in at that point. So those are the alternatives to doing something native. And so here, I'm going to go on a limb because I'm going to coin this. There are 3 types of mobile apps, says Jay. There are your static/locally dynamic apps, and these are mostly games, calculators, local media players, etc. Things like Angry Birds, our calculator. It's not touching anything. It's just kind of like a PC it was way back in the 80s. Then we have service consumers. These are one-way communication apps. And they're things like weather apps, music streaming apps, maps. And so what's happening here is that you're using the internet now, whereas the first one's not using the internet. The second one, you're using the internet, and you are requesting some data. So I'm going to Pandora and I want to hear the next 5 songs. Those are consumers. And then we have what I call enterprise apps. And these do bidirectional communications, and they're the most complex apps. These are like email apps, calendars, things like Twitter, multiplayer games. Actually, I wasn't supposed to Twitter, I was just supposed to say multiplayer games. But things like Gmail, where you're setting up your password and your account ID, you're pulling down your mail, you're typing something in, you're sending mail back. That's bidirectional. And typically that means that either you or someone on the net has created a API, a communications protocol for you two to talk between them. And so that becomes much more, I don't want to say difficult to program, but it is on the level of magnitude it would be the most. So things like that, I mean, Gmail, Twitter, Need for Speed, when you're racing with 5 other people on your tablet. So now let's just get to what we talked about, a simple app in Android. Before we get into this whole Android piece, anybody have any other questions? Okay. So a simple app in Android consists of 3 parts. There's the manifest, the layout, and the activities. The manifest tells Android how to run the app. It says, okay, I'm asking permission to use the GPS to get your location. I'm asking permission to read your contacts, perhaps, if you're making a personal organizer app. I'm asking permission to get to the internet. These are all types of permissions that must be specified inside the manifest. It says what kind of style do you want your app to have. Do you want it to have borderless windows, or do you want it to be dark color, light color, different, all of that stuff is among the things that's inside the manifest. And then we have the layout. It's an XML file. Don't be afraid of XML. It's not that big of a deal. It describes what the screen should look like. Basically graphing some text. It says, okay, over here I want a text box, and it's going to have these words in it, and over here I want an image, and down here I want a button, and it's a really easy language that shows you how to lay those things out. And then finally we have the activities. I just call it one activity.java. And what it does is it typically shows the layout and does what you tell it to do. So one of the first things it does typically is it views the layout, which is this. And then now you're seeing that stuff on your screen. Well, if you're not a static app, you might want to go to some service and get some information and then update that screen with it. That's what the activity.java does. So that's it. That's all it takes to make an Android app. So let's go look at a hello world. That's always the first program that anyone writes in any language is hello world. So what does it take in Android to print out hello world? So here's the manifest. The manifest, the first part is all boilerplate, pretty much. This is where the schema is for Android. It's part of an XML thing. It tells the system how to interpret the rest of this file. That's always the same. This is the name of the package, the one that you created. You name it whatever. Typically, it's kind of like a domain name, except it's backwards. So it's com.examples.android.helloactivity. That's because that's the full name. This is the name of the activity. The application label is hello activity. The name of the application is hello activity. And now here's the intent. It's like, okay, what do we intend to do here? We want to name our main action, main. So this will be main.java is actually what we get executed here. And then you're going to be it's going to be a launcher. And so that's it. So you want to launch main. The layout's even less. You say, okay, I'm going to have an edit text box. This little text box that you could potentially edit in if you wanted to. Again, we tell the Android schema where all that stuff is. Standard boilerplate. I want the width to be field apparent, so however big my screen is, fill it up. However high it is, fill it up. I want the text to be 18 FP. This is size. It's kind of like points when you do stuff, but the idea is Android has many different sizes of devices, from little ones like this to big old tablets. And so they have not only different screen resolutions, meaning how many pixels they have going across, they even have different densities, meaning that you can have the same size device. This size device, one of them has 1024 by 768 pixels, the other one has 1280 by 1024, all in the same space. So what we do in Android is we identify things in size-independent pixels. And so
it's like a relative based on the devices being used?
Yes. This gets scaled by the operating system. Whereas if you put just 18 PT or something like that, it looked great on one device, and then when you went to the other one, the text would be like that. So, and then finally, inside of this text box, because it's just like a Word text box, it's got to say hello world. And finally, let's take a look at the activity. Now, to boil it all down, it's a number of lines, but the only line that really matters in this case is this one. This says set content view to that layout that we just created. And so what that's going to do is bring up the screen. And that's all this does. And that screen is going to say hello world. So if you want to get into it, this says what the name of the package was, just like we said before, com, example, Android, hello activity. We have to import information so it knows how to handle it. So we're importing what an activity is. We're importing what a bundle is. And we're creating a class hello activity. That's the name of this. We're creating that the constructor. We don't have to do that actually. And then here we're saying on create. So when this thing first gets created, the first method that gets run is the on create method. So on create, this says I want to override, I want to supersede it. Set the content view. Boom, that's it. So come in here, set up all your baseline stuff, and set the content view, and you would see hello world on your screen. And that is largely it. I mean, you could go home tonight and within about an hour and a half have applications running on your cell phone. Oh, the thing I did not talk about. Wait, did I? I'm missing a slide. Yeah. There was one more slide that talked about the emulator. Because you say, I don't have an Android phone, but I still would like to get involved. Well, most of these mobile device development kits include emulators. And an emulator is a version of that phone running on your PC, Mac, Linux device, whatever. And so what you can do is you can look at it, it comes up, it says Google, looks just like a little phone, you slide it over, and you can deploy your app to it and see exactly how it works. It even allows you to simulate bad network connections. Because, again, one thing about mobile is you're typically, you're in that second or third tier when you're, otherwise, and so communication reliability becomes an issue, and your fault tolerance for that communication. And so it's important to be able to simulate what it's going to be like when someone goes into a room like this where I've got no Sprint service. How does your app act? And so that is largely it. So I hope that we've discussed the background relevance of mobile, where it fits in, the current state of the market, how you can get involved. And, do you have any questions? Yes?
I have a question. That was a fabulous presentation. I wanted to see what types of, does your company consult? What
Sure, yes.
business is your company?
We do consulting and application development. We're a team right now scattered throughout a couple countries. And yeah, we can talk after this.
Okay.
We provide consulting around mobile, systems design, robotics, computer graphics. I have a patent in computer graphic renderings for high polygonal environments, and a variety of technologies. Yes?
Is the development platform limited just to Java, or can you use like HTML5 and Python?
Yeah, well, see, it all depends on what you're trying to develop for. If you use one of those alternative development environments, you can absolutely develop it straight out in HTML5 and deploy it to an Adobe Air installation and put it on all the devices. Yeah, so you can definitely do that. And there's something to be said about the user experience. I mean, I think you'll hear a lot more and more about the concept of user experience or UX. And people on Apple are used to interacting with their applications in a certain way. And Apple is very, very stringent on enforcing that style guide. People on Android are used to operating a different way. For example, Android has had for a long time had a hardware backbone. Apple doesn't have the concept of a backbone, which means that on your Apple applications, you will always have some sort of navigation on a screen. On an Android application, you will likely not. Well, if you develop for one of these multi-platform developers, you're going to get kind of like a halfway near any of those. So it's not going to be truly, truly native. And if you do purely HTML5, then yes, you'll get your device on the platform, but how different is that experience from a native app, and what impact does that have on your users? And you'll have to decide that for yourself based on the type of app you're making. But yes, you can develop in other languages.
Now, what about now the new multi-core systems? How do you take advantage of that?
Well, actually, I'll do some shameless self-promotion here. This is my app, Grocery Ultimate. It's in soft beta release right now. What we're doing in this app, the challenge is this. It's a grocery shopping app, ostensibly, and you can speak to it, and it'll add items to your list. If you go to a different store, it'll show you the prices from that store. It's a wiki-based system, so if anyone comes in, taps on that, they can change the price. Everyone else will inherit that new price. Okay, so here's the challenge with multiprocessing. And it's not really on this page, it's on the next page. But I've got all of these items in your list. I've got to update the prices on all of these items based on what store you just selected. So now I have to go out to the server, to my cloud server, do the request, get that back, update. You could have 20 of these things. But meanwhile, you might want to go and choose another button. That means that update should not happen on what's called the main thread. When you're talking multiprocessing, you've got your main processing line here, right? And then every now and then, if you want to, you can fork something off and do something in the background, right? And then have it sync back up later. Well, Java in general supports a threading library, and Android even did a better job of giving you an async library. So you can say certain methods, certain routines you don't want to do in the foreground, you hand them off and do them in the background. Now you've got to be aware that there's that whole concept of concurrency. And so variables that get used down there can't really be referenced up here. There's all types of, what's called critical sections and mutexes and things like that you do to keep track of multiprocessing. But all of these devices can do it, even though they're not all they're not dual processors or quad processors. Surely the new phones are dual and quad processors, but my Evo 4G over there is a single processor, but I've run 50 threads, 20 threads in it, because the operating system is multi-thread. And that whole time slicing thing gives you the invisibility or the illusion of multiple processors. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Are you familiar with the issue that Steve Jobs had with Android when they first came out, as far as developing the development platform and how it was maybe similar to Apple?
Oh yeah, Steve Jobs felt very, very. This is not speculation. He was very, very upset because one of the Google members was on the board of Apple, and then they decided to come out with Android. Okay, here's the deal. iOS is Linux-based, which means Unix, right? Linus Torvalds made that free long time ago. Android is Linux-based. Well, if you're looking at operating systems, pretty much Linux is the only one out there, unless you're going to roll your own all over again. It makes no sense to do that. So it's not like they copied it, but Steve Jobs is, he was a megalomaniac kind of guy, So he felt he owned the world. He was upset when Android did this. The other thing was that, if you want to talk about why he should not have been upset, I don't know if anybody's familiar with a program a long time ago called Confabulator. No? Okay, how about Yahoo Widgets? All right, so in the beginning, way back in the 90s or somewhere around there was a small team created this application called Confabulator. And what it was little bitty widgets. You wrote it with a very simple language, and they just ran in the corner on your screen. And you could do that, so people were making widgets to get the weather. They just show up or get the news feeds, getting RSS feeds, getting this little updates on your screen. And it was pretty neat. It was kind of taken off. Well then, about a year and a half later, OS X, Tiger or Leopard, came out.
Panther.
It was what? Panther?
10.1.
Well, the one that had the toolbar on the bottom with the widgets. When they first started that. Tiger. Yeah, well, what that really was, it was the beginning, in everyone's mind, or in many people's mind, including the creator of Confabulator, and mine, that was a ripoff of Confabulator. And so what then came out shortly after that was the iPod Touch. The iPod Touch is simply a widget engine, right? So now you got all these little things, and so they changed from called widgets, and now they're called apps. And so that's how that kind of came to be, which is why, look, we all share the knowledge and the research and the technology. Android didn't steal from Apple. Apple didn't, steal from Confabulator. So the bottom line is if you don't have patents, you're not protected.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about the deployment process for an app? So it's great, you can start, you can develop and use the emulator, but how do you take the next step of rolling it out or getting to the point where you're actually able to test on a device?
It depends on the platform that you choose. On the Android platform, it's pretty straightforward. You register as an Android developer. You create a signed public encryption key. And then you sign your product with that. Now, while you're in development, you have what's called a debug key. And if you have an Android phone, you notice one of the options is accept programs from unknown sources. Well, people write, when you're doing a debug, that's what you have to do because it's not legally signed. They don't know who you are. And so right then and there, you can plug it in with a micro USB cord to your PC, fire up your Eclipse, press run, and it will run it on your PC. So, and you can choose. You can run. Sometimes I run it on the emulator. Sometimes I run it on your phone. Sometimes I run it on the emulator. Sometimes I run it on the phone, depending on what you're doing. You can even debug on the phone and do step, line by line, going through it. And that's important if you're doing things that use tilt and stuff like that, where it's difficult to do that on the emulator. If you're in the Apple environment, well, again, on the Android, so even in that debug, I mail it out. I'm mailing these betas out to my testers. And then they can load it on their phone and do that. With Apple, you can't do that. You can only load it to your device, and then anyone else who gets it, they've got to have an instance themselves. And then I think, I haven't gotten deep into this, but there is a way to deploy it for an enterprise, but you've got to buy a different kind of license. So that's that. Blackberry, you register as Blackberry developer or vendor, and then you can publish. Similarly with Amazon, once you've got that key sign, you can publish to the Amazon, to the Google Play Store. I hate that they named it that. I like Google Marketplace. And then on Windows, it's more like an Apple thing. You submit it to Windows, they reverse engineer it, and then decide what they're going to put on their store. So that's that. Yes.
So with mobility, is there kind of a re-emergence of client consumer? Because it seems like it's not. It seems like the processing is pretty heavy on the phone as opposed to being cloud-based.
Things have not changed since the 70s, right? When you had terminal services way back with mainframes and dumb terminals, right? And then, you had the PCs connected to that, and you want to call it client server. Then they call it thin client versus heavy client. The deal is this: yes, it is client server, except the server is a cloud now, and the client is a powerful device. But yeah, it really is a client server model.
Can you talk about some of the career opportunities for young folks that are coming up that would want to go in this field?
Well, it's like this. This is the PCs of the 80s. So this is where you want to be. There are a number of conferences that you can attend. I can't say straightforward, where to go to get a job, but I know that Hewlett-Packard is desperately looking for mobile people. I know that IBM is desperately looking for mobile people. People are trying to cross-train to get into mobile. I think it is probably one of the hottest, fastest growing technology fields right now. Between this and analytics. But see, again, this mobile just ties so much into everything else. Because analytics is very hot. HP just bought autonomy for $1 billion. Everyone's trying to understand why people do what they do, so that they can predict them better and sell to them better and do all of that other stuff. And mobile is one of the best ways to do that. When you have if you've got like the Meyer program, you've got these little weather bug, a little weather application on your phone. They're collecting data about you all the time. That's what's happening. They know where you're at. They know where you go. If you say yes and that thing says GPS service, they're knowing where you're going to be. Now, what I do with my app, I do the same thing, is I use it for you. You can tap on stores and tap a little GPS thing, and it'll find all the stores close to you. You can add them to your list. You can, so in that regard, it's a bit of a trade-off. I want a little bit of your information, but I give you a lot of value. This is a free app, by the way, and there's no ads in it. And so, yeah, that's a really good question. Okay, well, I'm trying kind of a bit of a radical different thing than most people do, but typically the way you make your money on a free app is you have a little banner down here with an advertisement. And every X number of thousands of times that thing comes up, they give you $1 or something like it's called clicks per million. It's generally what they rate that at. And so you try to get hundreds of thousands of your apps out there, and the advertisers then can click. Well, those advertisers are doing things like, when you use an advertising API, because it's a part of a little framework that you plug into your app, it's kind of like a black box. Just like all object-oriented stuff, you're just inheriting what was there before, right? Well, that little black box collects their name, their telephone number, their location, how many times they used it, what other applications they use, all of this stuff, and it sends it back. That's why they're giving you, part of the reason why they're giving you that little dollar per thousand or something like that. What I'm trying to do is, by you using this on a regular basis, I will understand what you buy per week, what type of products you buy, what type of other products you buy, what goes along with those products, which stores you go to, how long you stay in those stores, which aisles you go up and down in those stores, how long you stay in those aisles, all of that, so I can create a model of you. And then the idea is if someone says, I'm thinking about dropping bananas by $10, by 10 cents next week, I can say, based on this aggregated information, because I am big into privacy, I would not sell a single person's information, but based off of your demographic of your store, I can tell you whether that sale is going to be successful. And that's worth a lot more than this click-through stuff. So that's the idea.
So the background of your data, like you're using the new hot technology, Hadoop?
Nah.
You're not using that?
Yeah, we design everything here.
Okay.
And it's just straightforward. We're using JSON. JSON means JavaScript Object Notation, and that's typically the way things are transmitted from the local device across the wire. I started creating this app, conceiving it about in March or April of last year. I started coding it in September. And we're in soft release right now. It's about 180,000 lines of code or so.
Why would you not trust it to like make a single overseas or like?
The way this app was designed, it uses what's called a double byte character set. So none of the like names are inside the app itself. They're all in a separate file. So absolutely, this app is set up to go and be translated into Hindi, into Italian, French, Spanish, whatever. That's the idea.
When developing on the Android platform, is that Java? How is it truly cross-platform between hardware devices? Like if I wanted to develop an Android app, will I have problems between HTC and Samsung?
Nope. The idea is that the Java is Java. That's not going to be a problem at all. Where you're going to run into your issues is they have different screen sizes. And so your layouts can get to be a nightmare if you don't approach it properly. Because these are 3 different layouts, right? I could show you 3 other machines that look just like these, and we'd have 6 different layouts. The ones that slide out a little bit, it's a slightly smaller screen than this, different layout potentially. And so you have to be really intelligent about how you lay out your screens. And you do a lot of relative variables is what we do.
So in the enterprise space, is anybody doing, are you aware of anybody using it for like a BYOD type of deployment, bring on device type of situation where I don't have to arm my employees with a laptop and you got an Android, you have an IT app, push down to you.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that, yes. I'm sure that's common in infrastructures or in corporations. But it all depends on what they're trying to do. If you want everybody to have the app, I've been in this situation. It's just that some people have phones, some people don't have phones. You're the president of the company. What do? So do you give the people without phones? And it just gets into, given that everybody's got the phone, yes, bring your own device. But if they don't bring their own device, you have to provide it, right? Because they still have to use the app. It's just their job.
And what about security considerations? You as a programmer, especially now with the malware becoming a big problem, the enterprises are looking to Android. How are you as a software developer attack the security issues? So that IBM, so that GM and Ford feels safe if they use your app and it connects to their network.
Well, they probably won't. The way it works is typically what I've seen with some companies, I deal with Packard, I'm familiar with. They take an Android phone and they put their own environment in it. Oh, here's another entire industry associated with mobile is mobile application configuration management. Okay, because the idea is a lot of these little companies are doing little initiatives, writing little apps and stuff like this for their clients, for their employees, or whatever else like that. They've given no thought to the life cycle of the app and life cycle of the data, especially if it's an enterprise app where it's going by direction. And so they can, so when you're talking about security, you're talking about a few different things. One is malware. Okay, so you're an Android, you go to the Android App Store, you download a bad app. It tries to steal your data. Right now, it's a little bit of a pay your money, takes your chances kind of scenario. With every Android app, there is that permissions that you see before you download it. And it tells you whether, if you're looking at a weather app, why does it have to access your calendar? You know, that's the thing you really look at. Things trying to access your contacts and your calendar, your GPS position. Those are the things that, you know, kind of I would be aware of. But on Android right now, as an app developer, it doesn't affect me because I'm not making mal apps. To try to say get an app that I have accepted by a large company like GM or something like that, it's kind of like where they had with the CAD systems way back in the day when we were doing robotics for them. They had to bless our system. And so they had their COE environment, I think it was called at that time, or CMM something, where they have a process by where you get vetted. And at the end of it, you're a blessed software, and then they'll use you, and you can sell to that company. Sometimes it was worth the effort, sometimes it's not. You know, but, yeah. So I guess if there's no more questions, one of the things I'm asking is if anybody wants to be a beta user for this. It's a pretty neat app, I think. I can show you a little bit over here if you got a moment or two. But other than that, thank you all very much for your time.
Today, this is the type of people that we have involved, and this is the type of networking you can do, and the type of mentorship is available when you are a member of BDPA. So we talked about what's the value of BDPA, why should I be a member? These are some of the reasons why you need to be a member. I would have never met Jay had I not been a member of BDPA. But what I'd like to do right now is on behalf of BDPA, Detroit chapter, I'd like to present you with a certificate of appreciation. Okay, so now we have a little time left. Yeah, we can probably do some additional networking amongst yourself. If you want to do some one-on-one talking with Jay, he's available. We have until 9 o'clock before they officially kick us out. So have at it.
And also, if you want to go ahead and test Simon back there.
We got tickets.
Oh, yes, that's right.
If you would like to participate, we are going to have a door prize. The door prize is Office 10. A licensed version of Office 10.
How do you get a ticket?
Oops. Yeah.
No.
I need this song.
Right. So when you're making your list, you instantly have an idea of what it's going to be.
You're on tape.
And see, here's the answer.
All right, here it is.
Here it is that if there's any coupons that apply to the items on your list, going through your promo card or whatever else you want.
You can't see it.
The number is
identify you want to learn from them. So if they have a sale on bananas,
9, 6,
Yes.
2,
Yes.
0,
0.
Oh.
0,
Oh.
4.
Just go to Microsoft, download the software, and use that license key.
Tell a friend. Come back next month. Well, next month we talk about upcoming events. We're going to take off for the summer, so July and August we won't be having our monthly meeting, but we hope you will join us at the National Conference in August. That's where we'll
I'm just going to mail
be.
you
July the 14th.
Use Gmail, right? To get your
Keep
mail?
save that date. We're having a picnic.
Yeah.
Our picnic. We're going to have a picnic in conjunction with NABA.
The Black MBAs, and hopefully NASB, if I can get in contact with them. And then also on July 19th, we're doing a fundraiser at Buffalo Wild Wings in Dearborn.
Right. So bring your hungries, come to Buffalo Wild Wings, bring your family, come out to our picnic, July 14th, and go to the national website and sign up and become a member.
And all events will be